The hardest chapter to write in Unsinkable Faith was most definitely chapter 1. I had received this book contract about a year prior to a very difficult circumstance happening in my life. And so I was under contract to write this book about this great idea about positive thinking. But little did I know when I received that book contract from David C. Cook that my life would take a tragic turn. Something happened that I did not expect and was certainly extremely difficult to deal with. And that was that my husband of 25 years decided to walk away from our family and from my marriage. And it was devastating. And the statistics for separation and divorce today, even among Christians, is just off the chart, and it's heartbreaking. But until you actually find yourself in those shoes, it's really hard to relate to the devastation and the emotions and the overpowering sadness and discouragement and loss and mourning and fear and just all of the emotions that come along with such a drastic change in your life and your family, and just losing the future that you thought you had all planned out. And it's a very hard time. So it was in the middle of this difficult circumstance that I had to focus on writing this book. And in hindsight now, I can see that that was God's plan, because as I struggled to write Unsinkable Faith, and I struggled every day. Some days I cried and I would beat my fist on the desk, or I would slam my computer down, and I would just tell God, this is impossible. And I remember saying to God, you knew this was going to happen, so why would you even let me get this book contract? But what I realized was that it was God's plan far in advance for him to be able to weave the pieces of my own heart back together, and to be able to teach me first that the transforming of our minds is actually what will transform our lives. Because what I discovered is that while I was writing this book, day after day, week after week, month after month, just sitting in my office, like chained to my desk practically, I realized that something changed within me. And I noticed that God was changing my mind and my thought processes and my heart. And I found myself feeling happy and joyful on days, and I would think to myself, I've still got all these problems. I still have this issue with my marriage ending, and I still have, all these other circumstances that are surrounding me that are difficult and hard and painful and sometimes scary. So I remember asking God, how could I possibly feel this type of peace and joy today and feel happy in the midst of all of this? How could I be thinking positive in such less than positive circumstances? And that's when it really dawned on me that for months I had been researching and studying and writing about thinking positive. And I realized that God had to teach me how to truly do that first before I could write about it. So as hard as it was to walk through this circumstance, and I'm still walking through this difficult circumstance, I'm just so blessed and amazed how God has changed me first. And it's just made me even more passionate about this message, because I see the change in me, and I see the change that it's made in my life. And I know that regardless of what I face, whether it's this situation or other problems that will surely come up in the future, I can still think positive if I choose to do so. And I can still be an optimistic thinker and feel peace and happiness and joy and all the things that God offers. I can still have those things, even amidst the worst circumstances. All I have to do is capture my thoughts. We're told in the Bible to take our thoughts captive to Christ. And I never quite understood what that meant, but it really just means when we have a negative thought that's not pleasing to Christ, that's not positive, that's not something that he would say to us, or a way that he wants us to feel, or something that's, within our faith, that we have the power within us, and we have the willpower within us, if we so choose, to say, I'm not going to think that thought. I'm not going to let my mind go there. I'm not going to think that way. And instead, I'm going to think this way. I'm going to find a positive spin. I'm going to try to, if I can't even find something positive, at least not focus on the negative. But doing that over many, many months really changed my life, my heart, and it helped me have more of an unsinkable faith of my own. Because when we go through hard times and negative situations, our faith can sink and our optimism can sink. But I've learned that hearts anchored in God do not sink. And that is a promise that no one can deny.